Daily Words of God. God's work among man is inseparable from man, for man is the object of this work, and the only creature made by God that can bear testimony to God. The life of man and all of man's activities are inseparable from God, and are all controlled by the hands of God. And it may even be said that no person can exist independently of God. None can deny this, for it is a fact. All that God does is for the profit of mankind and directed at the schemes of Satan. All that man needs comes from God, and God is the source of man's life. Thus, man is simply unable to part from God. God, furthermore, has never had any intention of parting from man. The work that God does is for the sake of all mankind, and his thoughts are always kind. For man, then, the work of God and the thoughts of God, that is, God's will, are both visions that should be known by man. Such visions are also the management of God, and work that is incapable of being done by man. The requirements that God makes of man during his work, meanwhile, are called the practice of man. Visions are the work of God himself, or are his will for mankind, or the aims and significance of his work. Visions can also be said to be a part of the management, for this management is the work of God and is directed at man, which means that it is the work that God does among man. This work is the evidence and the path through which man comes to know God, and it is of the utmost importance for man. If, instead of paying attention to the knowledge of God's work, people only pay attention to the doctrines of belief in God, or to triflingly unimportant details, then they simply will not know God, and moreover, will not be after God's heart. The work of God is exceedingly helpful to man's knowledge of God, and is called visions. These visions are the work of God, the will of God, and the aims and significance of God's work. They are all of benefit to man. Practice refers to that which should be done by man, that which should be done by the creatures that follow God. It is also the duty of man. What man is supposed to do is not something that was understood by man from the very beginning, but is the requirements that God makes of man during his work. These requirements become gradually deeper and more elevated as God works. For example, during the age of law, man had to follow the law, and during the age of grace, man had to bear the cross. The age of kingdom is different. The requirements of man are higher than during the age of law and the age of grace. As the visions become more elevated, the requirements of man become ever higher and become ever clearer and more real. Likewise, the visions also become increasingly real. These many real visions are not only conducive to man's obedience to God, but are, moreover, conducive to his knowledge of God.